It's been weeks since Nox was hurt. I don't even know the day anymore. Time slips in here like everything else. We did everything we could, and for a while it seemed like he might pull through. But then he stopped moving, stopped responding, just breathing, barely. And Marcus, he wouldn't say it, but I saw it. The doubt in his eyes, the fear. We all started wondering if we were just waiting for the end. But this place doesn't let go so easily, not of anything. And sometimes, the things it gives back aren't the same as what it took.
The hallway upstairs in the mansion was cold and shiny, the stone floor glowing under the lights. Amber's boots clicked loud, each step echoing in the heavy quiet. The air smelled sharp, like bleach, reminding her of the clean medical room where Nox, the Belgian Malinois, was healing. Her heart thumped hard as she neared the heavy steel door, its smooth surface catching the light. She'd fixed Nox's cuts herself, seen his warm amber eyes trusting her. But now, a sick, creepy noise leaked through the door, a wet, ripping squish, like skin being peeled off, mixed with a deep, choking growl and a high, screechy whine that scratched at her brain, like something dying and angry. Her heart jumped, sweat sticking to her skin as she froze, her hand shaking by the door's handle. The noise wasn't a dog's, it was wrong, like something evil was fighting to bust out. Her mouth went dry, tasting like ash and fear, and she pushed the door open. It slid quietly, a soft hiss in the clean silence, showing the medical room inside. The room was super clean, white tiles shining under bright lights that burned away shadows. Metal cabinets gleamed, reflecting everything like mirrors, but the lights flickered now, buzzing like angry bugs. The medical table in the middle was empty, its smooth surface bare where Nox was supposed to be, all bandaged up. Amber's eyes got big, her breath stuck as fear choked her. The air smelled of medicine, but a nasty rotten stink pushed through, like bad meat and burning sulfur, mixed with a sweet sick smell that made her gag. It was so thick it felt like it crawled into her lungs. She looked around fast, then saw him in the corner. Nox was curled up tight, his back to her. His tan and black fur was wet, shining with a creepy, oily glint that twitched like it was alive. His body shook hard, like he was dying, and his breathing was rough, coming out in deep growling noises mixed with screeches, like something inside was screaming to get out. A faint thumping, like a heartbeat, came from his body, loud in the quiet room. Amber's skin felt clammy, the air heavy and sticky, clinging to her like wet cloth. The tiles under her feet vibrated faintly, like the room was scared too. "Nox, you okay?" she whispered, her voice shaky, lost in the buzzing lights. She stepped closer, her boots squeaking on the shiny tiles, the sound loud and sharp. Everything echoed, making her steps sound like cracks. As she got near, her heart dropped. Nox's body twisted, his back bending so wrong it looked broken, his legs jerking like they were snapping. A loud snap of bones hit the air, like wood breaking, then a wet, gross rip of skin tearing. Something inside him, something bad, not from this world, was busting out, ripping him apart. A sharp claw poked through his side, black and shiny, then pulled back, leaving a hole that leaked slimy goo. Amber couldn't breathe, her eyes stuck on the horror. Nox's muscles bulged, twisting under his fur, which fell out in clumps, showing raw, pulsing skin. His skin split wide, leaking black, slimy goo that glowed with a sick green light, moving like it had eyes. Thin, wriggling tendrils curled out of the splits, then sank back in, like they were testing the air. The air got hot, so thick with the smell of rot, sulfur, and that creepy sweet stink that she choked, her throat burning. The growls turned hungry, mixed with screams and a whisper in her head, "Come closer." That wasn't her voice. His head jerked, and his eye locked on her, not soft and gentle anymore but a glowing cloudy white with a thin, snake-like slit, full of hate. It wasn't Nox, it was the thing inside, watching her. Nox was dying, his body breaking as a monster tore out of him. His fur was sticky with goo, his bones poking out wrong, his shakes getting weaker, like his life was slipping away. The creature was close to busting free, killing him as it came. Amber felt stuck, her legs heavy, like the thing's stare was pulling her in. Then its growl turned to a snarl, aimed at her, and Nox's body lurched forward a bit, like the monster was about to break out. Her fear exploded, a hot rush that made her move. She tripped backward, her boots slipping, her hands grabbing nothing. The room's clean look was a lie, the flickering lights and shaking tiles making it feel like a trap. Her brain yelled, "Run, run, run!" And she turned, slamming the door shut. The steel banged loud, shaking the hallway, but the sounds followed. Snap of bones, rip of skin, a howl like Nox's last scream, and a heavy thud against the door, like something was coming. Amber ran down the hallway, her boots smacking the stone, each step begging to escape. The lights flickered wild, shadows twisting into claws and faces that didn't make sense, moving wrong. The air was ice cold, smelling like blood and burning, with a wet, oily feel that stuck to her skin. Creepy noises followed, scratches, and a deep growling roar from far off, like something huge was waking up. All her years fixing people, sewing cuts, setting bones, didn't help. She'd seen bad things, people torn up, dying, but nothing like this. This wasn't a dog getting sick. It was a monster busting out of Nox, killing him as it came. The picture stuck in her head. The splitting skin, the wriggling goo, the creature's eye staring at her. Her stomach twisted, the rotten smell and ashy taste making her dizzy. She wanted to run forever, scared the thing would bust out and chase her with those creepy eyes. But a tiny part of her, the part that fixed Nox, that knew he was loyal, hoped he was still fighting, even as he was dying. "What do I do?" she whispered, her voice cracking as she ran, lost in the howling wind outside and that deep, scary roar, like the world was ready for the monster being born in the mansion. Julia stood next to Marcus and Mike, her arms crossed and brow furrowed, sensing the tension in the room as they tried to figure out their next move. Suddenly, the door swung open, and Amber stormed in. Instantly, Julia's eyes were drawn to her pale face, her normally composed features twisted with something unrecognizable. Fear. Amber seemed distant, like she wasn't fully present, her wide eyes darting around the room as if she couldn't quite make sense of where she was. "Amber?" Julia's voice cut through the silence. She stepped forward, concern growing in her chest. "What's going on? Are you okay?" Amber stood there, unmoving, her breathing shallow and ragged, as if she were trying to hold herself together. Julia could see it clearly now. Amber was in shock. The woman who had dealt with countless emergencies, who'd handled things in the hospital that would have left others trembling, looked like she had seen something beyond terrifying. Marcus and Mike exchanged quick, worried glances, their eyes shifting to Amber, waiting for her response. But the seconds dragged on in agonizing silence, and it seemed like Amber didn't know how to answer, like her mind was struggling to grasp what she had just experienced. Julia took a cautious step closer, her hand hovering just above Amber's arm, not sure if touching her would snap her out of it or make things worse. Finally, Amber's eyes locked onto Julia's, her gaze sharpening just slightly, as if reality had finally settled in. Her lips parted, but only a single word escaped, her voice barely above a whisper. "Nox." The way she said his name sent chills through the room. Julia's stomach dropped, and Marcus's face immediately darkened. Mike shifted uneasily, looking from one face to the other, unsure of what the weight of that single word meant. Julia swallowed hard, dread washing over her. Whatever Amber had seen, it couldn't be good. Marcus studied Amber carefully. He had long suspected that Nox wouldn't recover from the wounds he had sustained, and though it saddened him, he had come to terms with it. But the look on Amber's face wasn't just grief. It was something far worse. Terror. His stomach twisted, his mind racing to figure out what could have happened. "Is he dead?" Marcus asked, his voice low, trying to gauge the situation. Amber just stared at him, her expression vacant, before finally shaking her head. "No." The confusion in the room thickened. Julia furrowed her brow, unsure what Amber meant. Marcus's thoughts raced, and even Mike, who had been leaning back against the wall, suddenly sprang to his feet, tension coursing through him. "What did those fuckers do to the dog?" Mike shouted, his voice loud and angry, jumping to conclusions, thinking it must have been Frank and his gang. He clenched his fists, ready for a fight, his mind racing with the possibility of some cruel game from them. But Amber didn't react to Mike's outburst. She was still too shaken to respond properly. Her lips trembled as she finally managed to force out a few words. "We need to hurry. There's something in that room." She paused, taking a deep, shaky breath before continuing. "Bring guns." That final statement hung in the air, the gravity of it weighing on them all. Whatever Amber had seen wasn't just a dying dog, it was something far more dangerous. Marcus's eyes darkened, and without hesitation, He grabbed his rifle from the corner of the room, slinging it over his shoulder. Julia and Mike followed suit, tension rising as they all prepared for the unknown threat that awaited them. "Let's go," Marcus said firmly, his voice steady but filled with an unspoken urgency. Whatever they were about to face, they had to be ready. Marcus, rifle in hand, moved ahead of the group, his face grim with focus. He stopped just in front of the door to the medical room and pressed his ear against it, listening intently for any sound that could tell him what they were about to face. His heart thudded in his chest, and the hallway seemed to narrow around him as the weight of the situation pressed down. Just as Marcus strained to hear something, anything, Lucas came strolling down the hallway. "Hi there," he said, his voice cutting through the tense silence, a bit puzzled by the serious expressions on everyone's faces. He immediately assumed the worst about Nox and frowned sympathetically. "Is Nox dead?" Lucas asked, his tone soft but uncertain, clearly not understanding the full weight of the moment. Every head in the group turned sharply toward him, their eyes narrowed in a collective glare. No one answered him directly. Instead, Julia raised a finger to her lips and shushed him, her eyes wide with tension. Marcus, still pressed against the door, shot Lucas a look that told him now was not the time for casual conversation. Lucas, now visibly confused, raised his arms in a gesture of frustration and silent questioning, but he didn't say another word. He could feel the tension in the air but was completely at a loss as to why they were standing outside the door, acting as if something much worse than a dog's passing had just occurred. Mike shifted uneasily, holding his gun a little tighter. Julia's breath was shallow, her eyes locked on Marcus, waiting for him to make the next move. Whatever was in that room, they were about to find out. Marcus's heart pounded as he twisted the knob and eased the door open inch by inch, leading with the barrel of his rifle. The room's dim lighting made it impossible to get a full view as the door swung inward. His senses were on high alert. Every breath, every creak of the door seemed deafening. He stepped inside cautiously, his body tense, ready for anything. As he moved to sweep the right side of the room, a sudden force, like a freight train covered in rough, bristling fur, slammed into him. It hit with such power that Marcus was knocked off his feet, his body skidding violently across the cold floor, his rifle nearly ripped from his hands. His head spun, and for a moment, he couldn't comprehend what had just happened. Sliding to a stop, Marcus scrambled to roll onto his back, rifle raised, finger already on the trigger, ready to obliterate whatever had attacked him. But before he could focus, before his brain could catch up to his instincts, something warm and wet slapped across his face, a massive tongue. It licked with such force that Marcus almost thought his skin was peeling off. It took him a second to realize what was happening. Nox, gigantic, towering over him, with fur that seemed to darken the entire room, was standing there, practically on top of him, wagging his massive tail. His pink tongue lashed out again, licking Marcus's face with the enthusiasm of a dog half his size, and despite the terrifying power radiating from Nox's enormous form, Marcus couldn't help but blink in stunned disbelief. "What the hell?" he muttered, lowering his rifle slightly but not fully letting his guard down, unsure if this was Nox, or if there was something more dangerous at play. Everyone else stands frozen in the doorway, too stunned to move, still trying to piece together what they just saw. To everyone's amazement, Nox, a hulking mass of muscle and fur, now the size of a horse, sits down in front of Marcus, tail wagging like a puppy, tongue hanging out as though he's completely unaware of his newfound size and power. Marcus, still on his back, stares up at the giant wolf-like figure in front of him, trying to process what just happened. The others remain rooted outside the room, not daring to take a step in, unsure whether to feel relief or more fear. "Come, boy," Marcus finally says, his voice a mix of awe and uncertainty. Nox sits back down next to Marcus, placing one massive paw on his leg, his head tilted to the side in a familiar gesture, as if he's saying hello to long-lost friends. The others exchange glances, still not fully understanding what just happened. They didn't know much about Nox before this, except that he was a well-trained dog. Now, it was clear that he has transformed into something much more than any of them could have imagined. Mike, standing in the doorway with wide eyes, finally breaks the tense silence. "Well, I am very glad it seems to like you and not me," he mutters, crossing his arms with a nervous chuckle. Marcus, still sitting beneath Nox's massive paw, looks up at him and raises an eyebrow. "And why's that?" With a smirk, Mike replies, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Because it's your problem now to keep that thing fed. And I don't even want to think about picking up the giant piles of crap he's gonna leave lying around." A few awkward chuckles ripple through the group, easing the tension just a bit, though the reality of what just happened still lingers heavily in the air. Marcus shakes his head, trying not to laugh as Nox continues to wag his massive tail, unaware of the chaos he's caused. The one who seemed the most amazed out of all of them was Lucas. He stood there, transfixed, his eyes wide as he stared at Nox. I can't make sense of this, he muttered, almost to himself. This is something I could never have imagined, not even in my wildest dreams. His voice trailed off as he took a step closer, still in awe. It must have something to do with the toxins in the creature's bites, he added, his mind already racing through possibilities. I wonder if this would have the same effect on humans. Amber, who had been standing silently up until now, broke her silence. No, I don't know, she said, her voice unsteady as the memory of the horrors that she had seen resurfaced. There was something unsettling in that room, and I could never have imagined that Nox would come out of what I saw. I don't know if a human could survive what Nox went through. Her eyes flicked to the others, her face still pale. The suffering, it was unimaginable. Even the transformation itself was so gruesome, so painful. I don't think a human could handle it. Even if it did change them, there's no way of knowing what they'd turn into or if they'd survive it at all. The weight of her words hung in the air, and for a moment, the group fell silent again, grappling with the reality of what Nox had become and the terrifying implications of what that might mean for them. Later that same day, as the warmth of the kitchen surrounded them, Bruce was busy at the stove, cooking up a storm. The aroma of fresh herbs and sizzling meat filled the air, but there was one presence in the room that dominated all the others, Nox. Now, transformed, his massive hulking form lay sprawled in a far corner. His bulk, once compact and wiry, was now a monstrous silhouette, muscles and fur rippling with unnatural strength. His size, unbelievable and overwhelming, made the rest of the room feel like a dollhouse compared to his massive frame. Mike, eyeing the creature with a mixture of fascination and concern, turned to Marcus with a wry grin. It's a good thing this place has such large doors. Otherwise, he'd still be stuck in that room. Zane, unable to pull his eyes away from the creature, spoke up, his voice tinged with disbelief. How on earth could this be Frank? You said it was gonna die. Now look at it. He leaned in close to Frank, his words almost a hiss, careful not to let his unease show too openly. We better hope it doesn't remember us. Frank, unfazed, didn't even glance at Zane. His response was casual, almost bored, like he had no energy to entertain the thought. Zane, it's a dog. It can't speak, you know. Zane, trying to mask his embarrassment, shrugged, though the words tasted bitter on his tongue. Well, it's not a dog anymore. The tension in the room hung for a moment as everyone took in the sight of Nox. His once docile nature was now replaced by a terrifying presence. Frank was a mastermind of global crime, orchestrating thousands of illegal operations from the shadows. He was the mind behind multiple drug cartels and syndicates, controlling them without ever being seen. Few even knew who Frank really was, and that suited him just fine. As he always said, the best way to kill someone was to have someone else do it, without them even knowing it was you that wanted it done in the first place. Frank didn't land in prison because of his most serious crimes. Someone, a person he was still trying to identify, had set him up. It wasn't a high-level setup, but one crafted well enough to get him convicted on minor charges. He'd been out celebrating at a nightclub he owned, with his girlfriend and business partners. When they left, his car was clipped by another vehicle, forcing him to swerve and hit pedestrians on the other side of the road. One person died, and Frank was painted as the hit-and-run driver who fled the scene, his blood alcohol over the legal limit. Prison was a setback, but Frank adapted quickly, asserting his influence and gaining a loyal following of inmates. Among them was Zane, a big, tough guy unafraid of anyone, except Frank. Frank didn't do friends. He'd never needed them, running most things alone. Zane became a valuable pawn, with the muscle and fearlessness Frank needed to get things done. An opportunity for escape came during transport. Frank, Zane, Bruce, and Tyler were en route to a remote penitentiary when the ambush hit. The attackers weren't Frank's men but low-level thugs who knew Zane. The sloppy ambush was set up to break them out, a carefully planned move with layers of deniability. Frank didn't care what happened to these thugs afterward. They weren't his problem. Frank's early days as a bare-knuckle boxing champion had taught him the importance of staying in control. That mindset shaped his entire empire and kept him in power, never leaving loose ends. He craved control, the one constant in his life. But even the most meticulous plans couldn't protect him from the mess that landed him here, in this strange mansion surrounded by creatures. Here, none of his old tactics worked. The influence, the bribes, the connections, they were worthless. At 54, he'd begun thinking about stepping away from the empire he'd built, especially after meeting his current girlfriend. Unlike his usual flings, she had him thinking about a real, stable relationship, though he doubted he'd ever find a way to truly trust someone. That lack of trust had always kept him from long-term connections, and now, he wondered if he'd ever find the life he secretly wanted but didn't dare believe possible. Sitting in the mansion, Frank sensed he was facing a crossroads. His mind was still sharp, his need for control as fierce as ever, but for the first time, his conscience nagged at him. All the power, all the money had come easily, yet the comfort he truly craved felt further away than ever. Now, his only goal was to find a way out of this otherworldly trap and back to the life he understood, a life where he held the power. Not being in control was like a physical pain to Frank, intolerable, gnawing at him until he acted to reclaim his grip. He couldn't bear it, couldn't survive without that sense of command over every situation. Sometimes, it drove him to do things he didn't always like, choices that were ruthless, but necessary to stay on top. Maybe that was why he'd never made any relationship last, he thought to himself. Not that it bothered him much. He was always on the move, always somewhere else, with no time to spend in any meaningful way with anyone. But now, sitting in this twisted mansion, he found his mind wandering to her. Damn, am I in love with her, he thought, or was it just age creeping in? Or maybe this place itself was toying with him, loosening his hold. Yeah, he thought, almost scoffing at the idea. It must be this place, no doubt. Frank looked across the room at Marcus and Julia, deep in conversation. He tried to shove the thought away, but he couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that he might actually be in love with Lauren, the woman he casually called his girlfriend. She did come to visit me every week in prison, he thought, replaying it reluctantly. And he cut himself off, frustrated. Hell with it. He wanted to dismiss it, chalk it up to boredom or a strange trick of his own mind. It was fun talking to her, sure. But maybe that's all it was. Prison boredom. Frank forced his focus back to Marcus and Julia. He needed a plan, and Marcus was central to it. What am I going to do about him? Frank thought, sizing Marcus up. He's in my way. But maybe using him is the best move here. He considered the options. Marcus was sharp, undeniably capable, maybe even more useful than the doc sitting off to the side. The more he thought about it, the more his mind latched onto it. Yes, using Marcus would be key. A wry grin crossed his face as another thought crept in. Maybe I am in love, he joked to himself, letting the idea linger just a little, knowing it would probably fade. And even if it didn't, what did it matter? For now, there was no way back to that life anyway. Marcus sat on the far side of the large, medieval kitchen, casually chatting with the others. Yet, beneath his calm exterior, he felt Frank's gaze burning into him like hot coals. He didn't need to look to know that Frank was sizing him up, calculating, likely conjuring some scheme that, no doubt, involved him. But Marcus pretended not to notice, keeping his expression easy and his attention on the conversation around him. In the corner, Nox had drifted off, his enormous chest rising and falling with deep, rumbling snores that sounded almost gentle compared to his new form. His snoring, oddly peaceful, drew smiles and quiet laughter from the group. It was a strange contrast, seeing such a massive creature so at ease, snoring like a baby. Only Frank remained silent, his expression distant, a storm brewing behind his eyes. While the others found a moment of lightness, Frank was clearly far away in his own thoughts, his silence underscoring whatever plan was taking shape in his mind.
In this wasteland, your breath kills my fear. Through the mud and the dark, I'll hold you tight. Heart's a spark, burning fierce through the fight. My strength, my ache, my unbreakable chain. In this hell, we'll rise through the pain. When the storm rips through, when the earth's gone wild, I'll find you in the dust where the lost are exiled. No end, no break, just you and me. We'll fight forever, raw and free. The mud in the dark, I'll hold you tight. Heart's a spark, burning fierce through the fight. My strength, my ache, my unbreakable chain. In this hell, we'll rise through the pain and through the mud.